Good evening, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is your short take. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about this rail strike that was averted by the Biden administration. We're going to talk about Joe Biden being accused of being a union buster and an anti-union president. Nothing could be further from the truth. So let's talk perspective here. We are living in a nation right now that is still trying to recover from the effects of the pandemic. We've had supply chain issues. I know, I work in retail, okay? It's hard for us to get Christmas lights, okay? Shipping containers have been difficult to get. Raw materials have been difficult to get. So what we have essentially is rail workers who do have very tough working conditions. Their attendance policies are stringent, and they get no paid sick time, okay? So they have been in negotiations since 2019. COVID put a damper on that, and they're back up, and there was a threat of a rail strike. Now, the Biden administration worked on negotiating with the railway unions and the railway owners for over a month. Tom Vilsack, Pete Buttigieg, Marty Walsh, all were involved in the negotiations. Biden put together a special committee to try to push this. And most of the unions came to an agreement. Two of them held out. So when two hold out, nothing goes. There was no choice for Joe Biden to make on this. Allowing the railway to strike would have cost the U.S. economy $2 billion a day and could have resulted in over 700,000 people losing their jobs from the ripple effect this would have through the economy. Coal, grain, raw materials, chemicals used, by the way, to purify drinking water, imported goods, and raw materials to make finished product are all transported by train. 300,000 barrels of oil a day are transported by train. Without that transportation, we would have had gas shortages, diesel shortages, and gas prices, which just started to come down, would skyrocket. Shipping charges, which skyrocketed during the pandemic, are coming down now. Those would go back up. And I would just like to remind all of the people in the United States that they wouldn't be able to get the shit they wanted for Christmas on time either. That's a very real fact. What else? You couldn't get grain to people who have to feed their livestock and their poultry. You couldn't get raw materials that go into the manufacture and the making of food. You would have some empty shelves on your food in your food stores. Are you ready to go back to that again? Joe Biden is running a nation of 337 million people. He has to look at the big picture here. And that's exactly what he did. We have an economy that is just starting to get its footing now. And to allow a rail strike in the midst of all this at this time would have been a disaster. I'd like to also remind people that many regional commuter rails that transport people to their jobs use freight tracks to transport people. So just some of the lines that would have shut down would have been Metro Chicago serves 281,000 workers daily. They would begin to taper service, and it would eventually probably stop. The Virginia Railway Express, which provides commuter lines from Alexandria and other northern points in Virginia suburbs to DC, would have suspended service. The Maryland Transit Administration would have suspended service. In Washington State, the Sound Transit that serves the Puget Sound area, they would have suspended service to 100,000 people a month. The San Joaquin Regional Rail Commission would have shut down the Altamont Corridor Express and suspended operations. Commuter rail is $11.2 billion industry that supports 190,000 public jobs and uses 3,000 miles of rails that are used by cargo rail. None of this is black and white. All of this is gray. There are always tough decisions to make when you're running a country. I'm afraid the American people really don't understand that in aggregate. They focus on one thing. And yes, I'm sorry. I do agree with you. And I agree with the rail workers. They deserve 7 paid sick time days. But I'm going to tell you something else. There was an additional bill that was passed by the House at the same time the bill was passed to avert the strike. And that bill gave 7 sick days to rail workers. It passed the House because the Democrats still own the House. When it got to the Senate, 207 Republican senators voted against it. Only 6 voted for it. Every single Democrat voted for it, except for the usual suspect, Joe Manchin. And why did Joe Manchin not vote for it? Because the fact is this. Let's talk about what the rail workers do get. They do not get paid sick leave. That's not a good thing. Many of us don't get paid sick leave, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. They do get short-term disability benefits that they can call on after 4 days and use to replace some of their pay for up to a year. They also get vacation time, and they also get personal leave days. But they do deserve and are entitled to 7 sick days. And I agree with that. And Joe Biden agrees with that. And Joe Biden tried to pass that in 2 bills that were also stymied by the GOP because we couldn't overcome the filibuster. One of them was Build Back Better. The other was the American Families Act. Joe Biden tried to get 7 paid sick days for every American, not just for the rail workers. And when Joe Biden decided to break this strike, to not allow it to happen, he said this wasn't over. He will continue fighting for those sick days. So for those of you who want to teach Joe Biden a lesson, I'm going to suggest something to you. You could have taught the GOP a lesson because 207 GOP senators voted against that. Only 6 crossed the aisle. Every Democrat, I'm going to repeat it, voted for it except for Joe Manchin. You want to teach someone a lesson? You could have done it in the midterms. Had more than 52% of registered Democrats showed up to vote, we could have gotten rid of we could have gotten rid of more Republicans. We could have had a huge advantage in the Senate, and we could have held on to the House. And had we done that, we wouldn't be having these problems. In fact, let me just tell you something. It isn't just the politicians that have to shape up here in America. It's the voters. You want to bitch about not having any power? Well, you don't exercise the power you do have. You live in a country where you can still vote. I'm going to warn you right now, you better use it in 2024. Because you know what? If you keep putting these heathens back in office, you're not going to be able to vote anymore. Joe Biden did what he had to do. He is not the enemy here. You need to direct your anger at the right people. I have the list of 207 senators. Anyone who wants that list can look it up online. They're there by name. Those are the people you need to teach a lesson to. And Joe Manchin, by the way. You know what? If you live in West Virginia, you're not happy that he didn't support Build Back Better, get a hold of the Democratic Party in West Virginia and demand a primary for Joe Manchin. And do it today. I'll talk to you all later. Okay, gang, I'm back. This is part 2 of this video relative to the rail strike. Now, I should probably tell you that the reason we do this way is the first 10 minutes of any video goes up on TikTok. We are trying to expand our reach as we move forward here. We have decided that the right wing owns way too many social media venues, and we need to expand our reach. So we make videos for a bunch of different venues now. So I am giving this a longer treatment for uploading to YouTube. So that's where we are right here. We're on the second half of this. So let's talk a little bit about what the railway workers actually walked away with as a result of the government aiding and assisting in the negotiations. The railway workers got 24% pay increase and an $11,000 signing bonus. They did not get 7 sick days. And I'm going to repeat this one more time. They did not get 7 paid sick days because 207 Republican senators voted against it. Only 6 crossed the aisle to vote with all of the Democrats who voted for it. And all of the Democrats voted for it, with the exception of Joe Manchin. It passed the House handily because the Democrats own the House. My message to you here is this. You deliver a big enough plurality in the Senate to overcome the filibuster, and you don't have to worry about the GOP stymieing everything anymore. This is the message here, folks. The message isn't to punish Joe Biden. Joe Biden's doing everything he can in the face of what he's looking at here. And pretty soon he will have the Senate. And tomorrow, with any luck, Raphael Warnock will deliver him a 51st senator, but he is going to lose the House. And that means whatever he wants to get through the House is going to be that much more difficult. Do we understand this? And I'd like to explain something else to you. He has also said he will not stop fighting for the sick time for the rail workers. In fact, he's not going to stop fighting for the sick time for all workers. So let me tell you about the people that I work with and myself. I can't remember the last time we got raises, to be honest with you. We're hourly workers, okay? We're worker bees. Where I work, we have no sick days. So when I was out really sick the first time I got COVID, before any vaccines were available or any treatments were available, I was out for 10 weeks. After the first 2 weeks, I was on my own. I had no sick time. We don't get to accumulate sick time where I work, because they fall under the number that's required by the state. They don't have enough employees to be bound to accumulated sick time. We don't get bonuses. We don't get family medical leave. We don't get short-term disability. We don't get any of the things that the rail workers do now have, which is, I will go through this again because I did it in the beginning part of the video. They have short-term disability benefits that they can call on to help them after 4 days. And they can use this for a year or more to help supplement their income. And they get vacation and personal leave days. We get no vacation and no personal leave days. When we take vacation, if I take a week's vacation, it's a week without pay. I get no personal leave days. I can take any day I want off with 2 weeks' notice, but I don't get paid for that day. Now, do I think that that makes up for 7 paid sick days? I absolutely do not. I do believe the rail workers deserve 7 paid sick days. I believe every American in this country that works for anybody deserves paid sick days. But the notion that Joe Biden is a union buster, that's way out of line. That's bullshit. Ronald Reagan was a union buster. Ronald Reagan fired 11,000 air traffic controllers. And he put the skies at risk of accidents by hiring replacement air traffic controllers. And not only did he fire 11,000 air traffic controllers, but he dissolved the Petco union. That's what a union buster does. Joe Biden did none of that. In fact, Joe Biden tried to assist in the negotiation and help the workers. And when that did not work, he tried to pass, his Democratic Party tried to pass legislation to give them their 7 sick days. And that didn't work. And it didn't work because of the GOP and Joe Manchin. So let's get some perspective here. The President of the United States is pro-union. And Nancy Pelosi is pro-union. And both of them did what they had to do, which was stop a strike that would have economically devastated this country. We have a country with 337 million people in it. And that's who he is leading. He is leading the entire nation. And he is responsible for their well-being, not just 115,000 rail workers. That's really where we are here. There is no comparison between Joe Biden and Ronald Reagan on any level. Now, you know what? I'm tired of people saying, stop being so pro-Biden. The fact of the matter is, the guy has gotten a lot done. He's gotten a lot done for a lot of Americans in the face of a lot of bullshit in his first 2 years in office. And no one even talks about it. In fact, the media doesn't even focus on it. But 3 media outlets have focused on it. And tomorrow morning, we're going to be talking about what Joe Biden has done for the American people since he took over for the orange jackaloon. And by the way, also what he has done to help labor, because they were part of the equation too. I will talk to you all then. You have a great night.